if you had noticed that you were a disease cure specialist and not a healthcare specialist, and if you talked with your friends about it, and did you bring it up to the professors?
Well, that's a lot of important questions.
Okay.
I thought when I went to medical school that I would be qualified to help patients. I didn't actually hear that that's felt like a desire of the professors.
What do you think they want? What did they want?
To do well on the test.
For you to do well.
For me to do well on the test, to pass the boards, and to know the name of the disease that looks like this, whatever that is. And I swear I don't remember a single lecture on health or how to be or...
But did you bring it up? Because you were living in the crazy hippie times where people were bringing up unfortunate facts often.
Right, and I mean, I looked like an unfortunate medical student. I had long hair. I questioned almost everything. I mean, I think that's a very important part of teaching, is that you also are questioning students, encouraging students to ask the questions of the professors. And if I asked a question about health, they would say, stick to the point. I was old enough to start thinking about my own health. I'd been hospitalized for, quote, mental illness and ulcers. And I remembered that it was vague, but hinted that how I was being was involved in why I was sick. And it's when I started to look at how I was being and to realize that I cannot know a patient in 7.8 minutes.
And was it that brief even in those times?
It was that brief.
Wow.
That there was no idea ever that you would make a patient a friend.
Right.
You wanted them to be comfortable with the quantity of your knowledge. Rather, I think you would find out that many patients wish you cared, but they had so many, especially if they were chronically ill, so many times when it was much more difficult to see the care than to follow a cookbook sense of remedies. And that could all be covered in 7.8 minutes. Or whatever it was, occasionally 10 minutes or maybe even 3 or 4.
But did you ever have a teacher in med school or a teacher in the university that you thought, wow, I appreciate this teacher? I remember you saying something about somebody.
I became more friends with doctors after medical school
than
during medical school.
And how do you explain that?
Partly I explained it that I didn't see that they were interested in friends, and that friendship was something you did outside of medicine.
I see.
That you didn't, if there was a beginning to the wellness movement, and I asked a professor, what food should I eat? I mean, with diabetes, they would tell you foods not to eat or foods to eat more of, but diet was rarely connected to illness. And the idea that diet would be connected to wellness, to being well. Exercise was not mentioned, diet was not mentioned, spirit was not mentioned, love was not mentioned, joy was not mentioned.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. You're talking about that you didn't appreciate your teachers.
Well, I didn't feel we were given what I was looking for in order to be a doctor, so I started to study on my own It's why I have a really large library on diet and exercise and those kinds of things.
So in a sense, these books were your teachers.
Right. And well, the more books I read, the broader the field became.
The field being?
Okay, let's take nutrition. Nutrition had a certain ethic by Western thinking. You know, meats, vegetables, and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Where things like yoga or spiritual practices had an idea about eating that was much broader, and how fast to eat, and how to mix different things that you're eating. And this seemed to be true with everything that I explored. If I was exploring the mentals, it was much deeper than I was told in medical school. Sports people did exercise. You could do a few. Well, when I was in the military, I did some exercises. But it wasn't a health regimen, really. And so, if you look at what I taught and how I was hired for all the years after medical school, living a life of joy, what is your love strategy? If I talked about health, I would talk about diet and exercise and other things. And there was a hunger for it, and not very many people talking about it that were medical people. They were more New Age or alternative therapies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did diet, it was an alternative therapy rather than health.
Right.
And so